Hello, friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck. All right, we're doing another episode of Bites and Nibbles with Breck today. I've been teasing you about this one for a couple of months now, and today we're going to finally do my mom's lasagna. That's right, I got the recipe from her last night, translated it into digital form, and we are ready to go. Now, this is going to be a little different from a lot of the Bites and Nibbles segments I've done in the past, because I know what to expect with this. And in the past, when I'm getting a recipe I've never done before, I'm usually pretty faithful to the recipe and don't really mess around with it a lot. I'm going to do that this time because I have prepared this before. I know what to expect. And so in addition to following the basic recipe, I'm going to add a few of my own little tweaks to it. I'm also going to double the recipe size so I can get a lot of this out of here. By doing two pans of it, basically I know this stuff freezes really well, so I'll have one for immediate consumption and I'll have one that I can put away from the freezer and pull out sometime later on when I'm in the mood for it again. So let's get going with my mom's lasagna. Now, you know that we did Elvis Presley's lasagna here a few weeks ago, and it was really, really good. It was probably the best lasagna I've made outside of this stuff. And while Elvis's lasagna was a lot easier to make and a lot less expensive, this one goes in the opposite direction. There's a few more ingredients, and it's made a little bit more from scratch. So let's look at the ingredients. Now, all these ingredients will be included in the description below this video, so you can check them out yourself. And the recipe that I'm going to put in the description below will be for a single dosage. Like I said, I'm doubling the recipe, so everything you see here is twice what you would need to do this for a single 9x13 pan. So let's look at these ingredients. It's going to be olive oil. It's going to be crushed tomatoes, tomato sauce, some crushed red pepper. That's one of my own things that I'm adding myself because I like things to have a little bite to it. Some Italian seasoning, some oregano, obviously some lasagna noodles, salt and pepper. And here we get to the cheese. We have different kinds of cheese. We have fresh Parmesan cheese, which I'm going to grate, fresh Mozzarella cheese, which I'm going to grate, fresh Swiss cheese, which I'm going to grate, fresh Munster cheese, which I'm going to grate, and some fresh Provolone cheese. I had to get that actually from the deli because I couldn't get that stuff prepackaged. In addition, there's going to be some ground chuck and some hot Italian sausage. Now, you can go mild if you're into that, but once again, you know me, I like my food to bite me back. In addition, there's going to be an onion and salt and pepper to taste. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in my crushed tomatoes, my tomato sauce, and all of my spices, my salt, my pepper, my oregano, my Italian seasoning. And I've also added a healthy dose of crushed red peppers just because I like my food to bite back. So in it all goes. This pot may seem overkill right now, but we're going to be throwing meat in there at some point too, so we will use all that space. And the tomato sauce. And then we're going to just bring it up to kind of a slow simmer. And I'm going to just do that kind of on medium heat. Get a nice big wooden spoon here, just kind of mix it all up here, make sure we get all the ingredients in there really good. And then we're just going to let that cook for a while. So for the next part, I need a cup of minced onions. So I'm just going to do that in the food processor using the grating tool. All right, next we're going to saute our onions in a 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. And we're just going to do that until they're a nice kind of golden brown color. And then we're going to mix in the meat. All right, and then we are going to add the pork sausage. That's 1 pound of that, and 2 pounds of ground round. And we're just going to basically stir that up and mix that up until it's no longer red. Now the original recipe my mom started with dealt with just ground beef, but she discovered a number of years ago that if you add the pork sausage into it, it really adds to the flavor, and I agree with her. That was a good move. Now you can get different kinds of pork sausage. You can get mild if you're not really into the spicy stuff, but you know which way I'm going on that, right? Now, a number of you have commented that you're not really that into onions in your recipes and would actually like it if I kind of went with recipes that didn't use so much onions. The onions in this case more are for texture than flavor, because they pretty much get cooked out. You know, the flavor and the heat pretty much gets all cooked out when you cook it, so you don't really need to worry about that in this case. And then next I'm going to strain all the oil out of the meat. And I'm just going to use my handy dandy strainer here. little bit more than will fit in the strainer in one batch, so that's okay. We'll just do what we can. And then the strained meat just goes right into the sauce. And now we're going to do the rest of it. And then that goes into the sauce. And just for convenience sake, I moved the saucepan back up to the front of the front burner just because it's easier to get at. Mix it all in. And we're just going to let that simmer now for the next 2.5 hours. Now, while I'm waiting for the sauce to simmer for 2.5 hours, there's no reason in the world I can't grate my cheese. And since the Munster, the Swiss, and the Provolone cheese are all going to kind of end up as a cheese mix, I can just kind of grate them all together. So that's what I am going to do right now. Just to make sure they all kind of stay a little bit mixed up here, I'm kind of throwing in one block of each of them in each session here. And I'm just going to kind of keep stirring this every once in a while just to make sure that we're not burning anything and kind of keep everything mixed in. See, this is where you're going to really get the flavor from the pork sausage and the crushed red peppers. That's really going to soak into the sauce when you in this 2-hour simmering period. So this is a really important part. All right, we're 2.5 hours later, so this has been simmering for a good time now. I had a little taste of it. It's got a nice little bite to it, so it's ready to go. Let's go on to the next step. Now, I'm a little bit short of large pots, and I need to cook my lasagna. So I'm actually going to transfer this into something else so that I can cook my lasagna in this pot. Yeah, that was the only thing I had that was big enough to hold it. Unfortunately, it was just barely big enough. So I gave this thing just kind of a quick little wipe down here, and now we're going to boil some water in here, and we're going to cook our lasagna. All right, our water has begun to boil, and so I am going to insert the noodles in there, and we are going to cook them as per the instructions for 8 minutes. Okay, we're 8 minutes in, and now we're going to drain these things. So I just got a nice colander I drained them into. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run some cold water over them so I can handle them. Because I got to pull them out one at a time and kind of set them on a napkin so I can properly place them into the bowl. Alright, so the next step is I'm just going to pull the individual noodles out one at a time. And just going to kind of stretch them out on this paper towel here. And every time I kind of cover up a layer of them, I'll put a paper towel over the top of it. And start over again. Okay, I think I got everything kind of set up now to do this. First thing I got to do is I'm going to spray my pans with some pan cooking spray. And I'm actually going to start the oven heating right now at 350 degrees because it's not going to be long now before we put this in. All right, we're going to start with just a little bit of the meat sauce in the bottom of each of the pans, just a little bit. I got the little basting brush here. We're just going to kind of spread it around a little bit. Just because you want to have a little bit of the meat sauce on the bottom. And then we are going to put 3 noodles on the bottom of each one of these. 1, 2, and 3. And 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to put a lot of meat sauce on each of these first layers. So I got just a nice big ladle here, and we're just going to ladle it on there. It's ladle time. Spread it all around. Find you can use this basting brush for like just about anything. Definitely one of the more versatile tools. And then I've got my mixed cheese. This is the Swiss cheese, Provolone, and Munster. And I'm just going to give it a real good thick coating of that. We're going to actually use about half the cheese in here on this first layer, because then there's going to be another layer on top. Just kind of mix it all over in here. It's kind of sticking together a little bit, so I'm going to kind of break it up. And then we're going to put another layer of noodles on. And this time we're going to go in the opposite direction. We want to kind of crisscross them a little bit. And since the noodles are a little longer than the width of the pan, I'm going to cut the noodles a little bit. And we'll kind of stagger in those pieces a little bit as we need them. Like that. Then we're going to put some more sauce on here. Sounds like my oven's ready to go here. Throw a little bit more in here because we seem to have a little bit of extra sauce, and no such thing as too much sauce, right? And then we're going to do the rest of the noodles. And they're going to go lengthwise again because we're crisscrossing each row. And then we're going to put the rest of the cheese mixture in here. Kind of formed into chunks a little bit, so I'm going to break it up a bit with my hands. That sometimes happens. But that's okay, it'll melt just the same. And then we're going to put a bunch more sauce in here. Spread it around. And then I've got my mozzarella. I'm going to put a lot of mozzarella on here because I like mozzarella. And some fresh grated Parmesan. We're going to put a lot of that on here too. Probably a little bit more Parmesan than I normally use, but that's fine. And then we're going to put the rest of the sauce on. Kind of mix it in here as much as I can. And then the rest of the mozzarella. I'm actually going to leave a little bit of the Parmesan because I actually did make up a little bit more of that than I really need. But that's okay, that'll be good on spaghetti. And it is ready to go into the oven. And into the oven we go. Put a little bit of aluminum foil underneath there just so if it drips a little bit, we're okay. It's probably going to be okay, but we'll see. And we're going to cook it for about 45 minutes. All right, 45 minutes later, let's take this thing out. Ugh. All right, now we gotta let this thing rest for about 15 minutes before we can eat it, or else it'll just be really too hot. And it kind of needs the time also to kind of dry up and kind of solidify a little bit, which it'll do now over the next 15 minutes. All right, well, I pretty much know what I'm getting out of this because I've had this before. I tasted the sauce when it was still in the pot and was really impressed with it. It had kind of a nice bite to it. So I really kind of matched the red peppers and the spicy pork sausage to really come up with a real nice flavor. But since this is the first time I'm tasting it all by itself as a whole thing, let's try it and see what I think here. Yeah, very good. Now it's a little sloppy right now because it just came out of the oven and it's all melty and all that, and it just basically kind of runs into a puddle here when you have it. But once you get it cooled off and get it down to like refrigerator levels or freeze it or whatever you're gonna do with it, it comes out really well, comes out nice and formed, and then you can throw it in the microwave and it's just really, really good. Now, as I said before, it's about $53 to prepare this outright, but when you factor in the fact that you get about 16 servings out of it, it comes down to a little less than $3.50 a serving. So, I'm going to be eating this now probably for, well, I'll go through one of these trays in probably the next week, and then the other one's going to go in the freezer, and at some point I'll pull it out and I'll have another week of really great lasagna. So, yeah, I really like this. Like I said, it's always been kind of my benchmark or what I judge every other lasagna against. And, I think I've really kind of narrowed down the recipe and gotten the nice bite that I like out of it. That's always been kind of my issue. My mom and dad, they aren't into spicy the way I do. I am. So they kind of, go a little bit more mild. And so this is really about third or fourth time I've made this, and I think I really got the spice just about right. What there is about 4 tablespoons of crushed red pepper, and then the hot spicy pork sausage. And it's got a real nice flavor to it. I love the cheesiness to it, and all the meat in it. It's an overall superior product. So I definitely recommend this one. So anyway, in a minute, I'm going to eat this. And before I do that, I have to do what I always do, which is say thank you as always for watching. And I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Bon appetit.